I remember that morning vividly. It felt like any other, with no warning of the nightmare that was about to unfold, a nightmare that still sends a shiver down my spine as I write these words. I am 72 years old. They say, at this age, nothing can surprise you anymore. But I was wrong, completely wrong. I went to Dr. Daniel Moore's office for my monthly checkup. He's been my family doctor for nearly 20 years, a man who has seen me through every chapter, from a vibrant middle-aged woman to a lonely widow after my husband's death, to these quiet years living with my adopted son and his small family. I trusted him, almost implicitly. So, when it all began, when his hands trembled as he placed the stethoscope on my chest, I knew instantly that something was wrong. My heart was beating faster than usual, not from illness, but from his evasive gaze. He didn't look me in the eye like he always did. His words were strange, rushed, and unnatural. Your heart rate is fine. Blood pressure is good. All in all, you're in remarkable health. Remarkable. I forced a weak smile, telling myself I was just being paranoid. He's only human. Maybe he was tired or preoccupied. But then, the fateful moment happened. As I bent down to pick up my handbag from the chair, I felt a foreign object being slipped into the outer pocket. I froze for a second, then looked up to see Dr. Moore's face. He was smiling, but it was a stiff, unfamiliar smile. And his eyes held something else. A look of worry, almost a plea. Before I could ask, I heard him say in a low voice, almost a whisper, "Take care of yourself, and remember, family isn't always family." Goosebumps prickled down my spine. Family isn't always family? I wanted to question him, to hold him back, but he quickly closed my file and hurried to open the door for his next patient. I had no choice but to leave, my mind in turmoil, my heart pounding like a drum. In the taxi on the way home, my hands shook as I opened my bag. In the outer pocket was a small, hastily folded piece of paper. It was the doctor's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. There were just 5 words. "Don't go home. Run." I was paralyzed. My hand trembled so badly I nearly dropped the note. Each word was a blade twisting in my heart. Why would he write this? Why not just tell me? What was happening at my home? My mind raced the entire way. Memories flooded back, a jumbled, rewinding film. I remembered the day 40 years ago when I held a 2-year-old boy in my arms, the adopted son I had poured all my love into, raising him as my own blood. I remembered the years my husband and I worked ourselves to the bone, saving every penny to give him a future. I remembered when my husband passed, and he was my only comfort. I trusted him with my whole heart, my whole life. And now, why was the doctor telling me to run? I sat frozen in the taxi, watching the world blur past my window. The driver asked if I was okay. I just nodded, afraid to speak, knowing my voice would break. I clutched the note in my hand, my wrinkled fingers still strong enough to hold on to this lifeline, at least. I wanted to believe it was. The worst-case scenarios flashed through my mind. A fire, an accident, a robbery. But then the doctor's eyes, his words. Family isn't always family. Locked everything into place. Yes, he had to be talking about the very people I called my family. The thought sent a sharp pain through my chest. I thought of my daughter-in-law, the woman I had once embraced like a daughter. I thought of my granddaughter, who used to chirp, "You're the best grandma ever." And then, my adopted son, the man I trusted so much that I gave him the house, the power to make decisions about my life. Could it be that they were the ones I needed to run from? A primal fear rose inside me, as cold and chilling as being thrown into an icy lake. I wanted to deny it, to tell myself the doctor was mistaken, just being overly cautious. But my heart knew better. Something was terribly wrong, and I was at the center of it. The taxi pulled up to the familiar house. I had lived here for decades. Every brick, every branch was tied to a memory. But today, looking at it, it no longer felt like a home. It looked like a trap. A beautiful wooden cage, waiting to swallow me whole. I sat still in the car, not getting out immediately. My hand, slick with sweat, gripped the note. Should I go in? Should I listen to him and run? Right now? But run where? A 72-year-old woman, in this huge city. Where could I possibly go? The driver turned back. Ma'am, are you getting out? I nodded mechanically, paid the fare, and stood before the gate. I don't remember how I unlocked it and walked inside. I only know that each step was heavy, as if I were entering a foreign land. The doctor's words echoed in my head. Don't go home. Run. But it was too late. I was already home, and I knew. From that moment on, my life would never be the same. The front door clicked shut behind me, the sound echoing in my soul like the slamming of a prison gate. The house, once so familiar, now felt alien, as if I had walked onto a stage where everyone had rehearsed their lines, and I was the unsuspecting audience member forced into a role. The living room was bright with daylight. The familiar beige curtains were drawn. The sofa where I always sat to knit was still there. But somehow, it all looked fake, cold, devoid of the warmth of a home. A thought flickered. Maybe it's me who has changed, not the house. You're back. Mom? My son Nathan's voice called out. He was standing there, tall and strong, but his face tightened when he saw me. The smile he forced was so strained it made my heart ache. My son, who used to rush out to help with my groceries, smiling and asking about my day. But today, his eyes held a flash of something. Disappointment? I shuddered, remembering Dr. Moore's eyes. Family isn't always family. The words were a brand on my mind. How was the checkup? He asked, his tone flat, missing its usual warmth. Everything's fine, I replied, trying to sound casual. The doctor said I'm in great health. The moment the words left my mouth, I saw a flicker of annoyance cross his face. Then, as if catching himself, he quickly smiled. That's good, really good. But the smile was hollow, and his eyes darted away. My throat felt dry. Eleanor, my daughter-in-law, walked in from the kitchen, holding a few papers. She flinched when she saw me, then quickly hid the stack behind her back. Oh, you're back. Was everything okay at the doctor's? I looked at her, my gaze steady, trying to keep my voice calm. Yes, everything is fine. Eleanor nodded slightly, but her eyes flashed with something that looked like regret. I knew I wasn't mistaken. I've spent a lifetime observing the smallest details, the way my husband's brow would furrow when he was worried, the sparkle in my son's eyes as a child when he got candy. How could I not recognize this look? The air in the room grew thick. My son and daughter-in-law exchanged a brief glance, as if sharing a secret I wasn't privy to. My heart pounded, but I had to act as if I saw nothing, heard nothing. I smiled weakly. I'm a little tired. I think I'll go lie down. Of course, Mom, get some rest, Eleanor said, her voice sweet but lifeless. As I walked past the living room, I saw them sit on the sofa, their heads bowed together, whispering. The moment my footsteps faded on the stairs, their conversation stopped. I felt like an outsider in my own home. In my room, I sat on the bed, my hand still clutching the handbag with the doctor's note inside. I didn't dare take it out. as if looking at it would make the terrible truth real. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, that maybe Nathan and Eleanor were discussing something else entirely, but my heart refused to listen to reason. It kept hammering, a drumbeat of warning. That evening at dinner, the strange atmosphere was suffocating. Our dinners used to be filled with lively conversation, but tonight, a heavy silence hung over every dish. Nathan tapped his fork against his plate. Eleanor gave only one-word answers, and I tried to maintain a pained smile. "Is it good, Mom?" Eleanor asked, her voice unnatural. "Yes, delicious," I said, though I couldn't taste a thing. The food felt like straw in my dry throat. Suddenly, Nathan spoke. "Mom, have you ever felt forgetful lately? Like leaving the stove on or forgetting to lock the door?" The question was a knife to the gut. I looked up, straight into his eyes. "Why do you ask?" He gave a forced laugh. "Oh, no reason. I'm just worried. You're getting older, and sometimes people can get confused." I choked on my words. A raw pain tore through me. Was this what the doctor meant? Were they planting the seed of confusion to justify something? My hands trembled, but I managed to keep my voice steady. "My memory is fine. You don't need to worry." The meal ended in heavy silence. I swallowed each bite like I was swallowing tears. That night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning. I could hear whispers from downstairs, the sound of stealthy footsteps, the rustle of papers. My heart seized. I wanted to go down and listen, but fear kept me paralyzed. I could only lie with my eyes wide open in the dark, the 8 terrifying words replaying in my head. "Don't go home. Run." I lay awake all night, my son's question echoing in my ears. "Are you getting forgetful?" It seemed innocent enough, but combined with the look of disappointment when I said I was healthy, and Eleanor's startle when she hid those papers, it all felt like jagged pieces of a puzzle about to form a picture I didn't want to see. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. Every sound in the house made my heart leap. The creak of footsteps downstairs, the click of the stove turning on and off, the soft squeak of a cabinet door. I knew every sound in this house. But tonight, they all had a different, sinister tone. They felt like warnings of a danger lurking around me. Around 3 in the morning, when the house fell silent, I couldn't take it anymore. I reached for my handbag, my hands shaking as I pulled the note from the outer pocket. I had avoided it all day, afraid that opening it would destroy the last fragile shred of hope I had left. But I knew I couldn't live in this suspicion. I had to face it. My wrinkled hands unfolded the paper. In the dim yellow light of my bedside lamp, I saw Dr. Moore's familiar handwriting, firm, slightly slanted, and in some places, rushed. It wasn't just the 5 short words from before. Below them, in smaller, hurried script, were more lines, clear enough for me to read. "Be careful. Eleanor came to see me yesterday asking about your mental state. She wanted me to sign papers certifying that you're showing signs of confusion and need to be placed in a nursing home. They also asked about your assets, your pension, and your savings. I refused, but I don't think they will stop. Don't go home. Run, before it's too late." The note slipped from my fingers. I sat in stunned silence. All sound faded away, except for the frantic pulsing in my ears. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. My whole body began to tremble, a deep, chilling cold that the thick blanket couldn't warm. My son. The boy I had raised since he was a scrawny, abandoned child with sad eyes. I had given him a home. I had traded my youth, my health, my career to raise him. My daughter-in-law, the girl I once thought was a gift from heaven, who I had embraced like my own. And yet, they went to my doctor, trying to have me committed, trying to steal what little I had left. A wave of dizziness washed over me. My eyes burned, and tears began to stream down my cheeks, hot against my skin. All those years of love and sacrifice. For this? In that moment, I felt like a fool who had spent her entire life raising a child who wasn't her own, only to be betrayed by him. I remembered the hard years when my husband was alive. He dreamed of opening a small shop, and I worked part-time at the library to help. When he died of a heart attack, I thought I was still lucky, because at least I had Nathan and his family. I used to tell myself, I still have a son, a granddaughter. I'm not alone. But now, I realized that family was just an empty shell, filled with greed and betrayal. I clenched the note in my hand until it was a crumpled mess. My throat was tight. I wanted to scream, to run out of the house that very second, but reason held me back. Be calm. You have to be calm. If I act rashly now, they'll know I've found them out. They'll accelerate their plan, and I'll lose any advantage I have. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think. This couldn't be my home anymore. Everything had changed. This house, once my sanctuary, was now a trap. The people I called my children were now enemies hiding in the shadows. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the faint moonlight cast shadows on the lawn, listening to every noise. My mind was a storm of pain, anger, and fear. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. On one side was a lifetime of broken love. On the other was survival. And I knew I couldn't fall. I had to find a way to stand firm. But what hurt the most? It wasn't the note, not the evil plan. It was the realization that I had been living in a fantasy. I had deluded myself into believing that if I just sacrificed and loved unconditionally, I would receive a little warmth in return. But the truth was different. The cruel reality was laid bare. Love is not always returned, and family is not always family. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed silently. The tears soaked my pillow. I cried for the lost years, for my own foolishness, for the maternal love I thought was unbreakable, now revealed to be a cruel lie. I cried until there were no tears left, only swollen eyes and a hardened heart. As dawn broke, I looked at myself in the mirror, a tired, old face, etched with deep wrinkles. But in my eyes, something else flickered, a small but steady flame. I knew, from this day forward, I could not live as I had before. I had to change. I had to be smart. I had to find a way to protect myself. I tucked the note into my pocket, like a piece of evidence, a reminder that what I had heard, what I had seen, was not a dream. It was real, the raw, brutal truth. And I knew this was only the beginning of the nightmare. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I went downstairs to make tea, keeping a faint smile on my face as if nothing had happened. But inside, Dr. Moore's note burned against my skin, every word seared into my heart. Eleanor asked about your mental state, wanted me to sign papers. Throughout the day, I moved like a shadow, doing my chores in silence. I could hear my son and daughter-in-law talking in the living room, but every time I walked by, they immediately fell silent. That silence was heavier than any angry words. It was confirmation that I no longer belonged in their world. That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. In the house that was once my safe haven, every sound now made me tense. The creak of the floorboards, the whistle of the wind through a window crack. I lay listening, heart pounding, until I heard a distinct sound from the kitchen, the soft clinking of dishes, followed by familiar voices. My heart seized. It was Nathan and Eleanor. Their voices were low, but in the dead of night, I could hear every single word. "I already talked to the doctor," Eleanor whispered, her voice laced with frustration. "He won't sign. He keeps insisting she's perfectly lucid. Just be patient," Nathan replied, his deep voice edged with impatience. "If Moore won't cooperate, we'll find another doctor. We just need one signature on her file." I bit my lip to keep from crying out. The tears streamed down my face. It was just as the doctor had warned. This wasn't a suspicion anymore. This was their plan. Eleanor spoke again, her voice cold. "But what if she stays healthy like this? How long are we supposed to wait? I can't spend another 10 years struggling like this. Her pension, the house, the savings, it's all tied up with her." "Quiet. Keep your voice down," Nathan hissed. "Don't let her hear you." I held my breath, pressing my ear against the crack of my bedroom door. My body was shaking, but I couldn't stop listening. "You don't get it," Eleanor continued, her voice trembling not with fear, but with ambition. "I sacrificed my youth to be with you. I thought marrying you meant we'd have a house, money. But it's been 10 years, and she's still here, still spending money on useless things. Do you know how people look at us? Like we're pathetic, living off an old woman." "Shut up," Nathan growled. But there was no affection in his tone, only exhaustion. "I want out of this just as much as you do. Trust me, Eleanor, it'll be over soon. If Dr. Moore won't sign, I'll find someone who will. I heard there's a new doctor at the clinic on the west side who'll do anything for the right price." I clutched my chest, feeling the air being squeezed from my lungs. My son, the child I raised with all my love, was discussing buying a doctor to certify me as mentally incompetent, to legitimize throwing me in a nursing home. Eleanor lowered her voice, almost hissing through her teeth. "You need to do it fast. I can't stand it anymore. Olivia has applied to college. Where's the money going to come from? I'm done living on charity from this old woman." "Stop repeating yourself," Nathan said. "I'll call a lawyer tomorrow. We might not even need a doctor. We just need a court to declare her incompetent to manage her own finances. He'll know how to handle the paperwork." A chill spread through my entire body. A lawyer, paperwork, the court. It was all planned out. These weren't just frustrated complaints. This was a scheme. Eleanor let out a sharp, cruel laugh that felt like a needle prick. "Good. I swear, I can't live another day with her. She's always acting like she sacrificed her whole life for us, always reminding us of what she's done. It's exhausting. I don't need her pity. I need her money. I need to be free." I almost screamed, almost stormed downstairs to confront them right then and there, but my feet felt glued to the floor. I stood trembling in the darkness, my ears still pressed to the door. Every word was a knife cut. "I'll look into the legal process tomorrow," Nathan concluded. "She's old. She doesn't have the strength to fight back. Besides, she's alone. No relatives, no friends. Who's going to stand by her?" Eleanor's cold laugh echoed again. "Exactly. She has no one. She made herself alone. And now she's going to pay the price." I stumbled back, collapsing onto my bed, my hand covering my mouth to stifle a sob. The room spun around me. They no longer saw me as a mother, as family. In their eyes, I was just an obstacle, a walking bank vault, a burden that needed to be removed. In the darkness, I cried until I had no tears left. I remembered a tiny Nathan, toddling around the yard with a ball, falling and bursting into tears. I had picked him up, wiped his face, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Mommy's here. I'll always protect you." I had believed that for 40 years. But tonight, I realized the one who needed protection wasn't him. It was me. I clenched my fists, feeling a fire smoldering inside me. I was in pain, I was angry, I was terrified. But above all, I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't act, if I just stayed silent, it wouldn't be long before they succeeded. They would take me away, sign their forged papers, and bury the rest of my life within the cold, four walls of a nursing home. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by my bed, listening as the house grew quiet. But inside me, a storm had erupted. I knew. From this moment on, there was no turning back. I sat by my bed all night, hugging myself as if to keep from shattering into pieces. Every word from the kitchen conversation replayed in my head like a broken record. You need to do it fast. She's old, no strength to fight. She's alone, no relatives, no friends. They were right about one thing. I was alone. I had made my life that way. When I was younger, I had friends, I had hobbies, but then I met my husband, fell in love, and we adopted Nathan together. We poured all our love into that little boy. I quit my job at the library, gave up the painting classes I adored to stay home and raise him. I used to think, as long as my child is happy and successful, that's all that matters. I remembered the days when my husband was alive. He was a kind, hard-working man with a ready smile. We weren't rich, but this house was filled with laughter. When Nathan was little, he was often sick, crying through the night. I would hold him for hours, soothing him with the same lullabies my mother used to sing to me. I never regretted adopting him, not once. I believed that love could make bloodlines meaningless, that a child, even one not born to you, would be just as grateful as a biological one. But life isn't a fairy tale. After my husband died suddenly from a heart attack, everything fell on my shoulders. Nathan was a young man by then, but I still worried about him like he was 5. I was afraid he would struggle, so I kept working, kept saving, kept sacrificing. I gave him everything. This house was in my name, but I let him have full use of it. My pension, my savings. I was open with him about it all. I thought I was doing the right thing. Tonight, looking back, it was all so tragically ironic. I had handed them the keys to my life, and it still wasn't enough. They didn't know, they could never know, that I had something else, something I had kept hidden like a treasure for over 10 years. When my husband passed away, besides our joint savings that I told Nathan about, he left me another asset. He'd been a consultant for a small export company. The salary wasn't much, but he had shrewdly invested in some out-of-state real estate and an international bank account that no one knew about. Before he died, he gave me all the paperwork, all the passwords. Keep this, and don't tell anyone, not even Nathan. He had warned me. I want you to have a real safety net, just in case. At the time, I thought he was being overly cautious. I even considered telling Nathan a few times, but I always held back. I wanted him to learn to be independent, to love me for me, not for my money. I still remember the evening I sat in my bedroom, looking at the numbers on the bank account statement on my computer screen, over $2 million, and my heart felt heavy. I never touched a cent of it. I continued to live simply, shopping frugally, wearing old clothes. Now, remembering Eleanor's greedy eyes, hearing Nathan's cold voice, I finally understood how lucky I was to have kept that secret. They thought all I had was the house, my pension, and a little savings. They had no idea I could buy 3 more houses like this one, or hire a team of lawyers if I needed to. They saw me as weak prey, but they didn't know I was holding the winning card. I looked in the mirror, the same old face, the same silver hair, but in my eyes, I saw a different light, a light that had been extinguished for years, the light of resolve. I wasn't just a betrayed old woman. I was the one holding all the power, even if they didn't know it. A strange feeling washed over me. The pain was still there, the wound was still fresh, but underneath it, A quiet strength was building. For years, I had sacrificed, endured, and yielded. I had lived as a mother, a wife, a grandmother. But from this moment on, I had to live as myself. I had nothing left to lose but the invisible chains I had placed around my own neck. I opened a drawer and took out a small, old wooden box. Inside was the paperwork my husband had left me, real estate deeds, bank statements, and the passwords I had carefully copied into a small notebook. Holding them felt like holding my own life in my hands. Each piece of paper was a layer of armor, a weapon I had forgotten I possessed. I placed the notebook on the table and stared at it for a long time. For years. I had told myself, keep it for a rainy day. Now, I knew that rainy day had come. They thought I had nothing. They thought I was lonely and weak. They thought I would go quietly into that nursing home like a bird with broken wings. But they were wrong. I gently smoothed the papers, remembering my husband's voice. Don't tell anyone, not even Nathan. I want you to be safe. I finally understood the true meaning of the word safe. My husband, even in death, was still protecting me with what he had left behind. A tear fell onto the back of my hand, not a tear of despair anymore, but a tear of realization, of newfound strength. For the first time in days, I took a deep breath that didn't feel constricted. I was no longer just the prey. That night, I put the papers back in my bag and placed it under my pillow. I lay down, my eyes closed, but my mind was wide awake. Outside, the house was as silent as a predator in hibernation. But inside me, a fire had been lit. I was no longer the kind, blindly trusting woman I used to be. I was preparing for something much bigger, something they would never see coming. After tucking the notebook under my pillow, I knew I didn't have much time. I could hear the steady rhythm of the sleeping house, but my own heart was a raging storm. Everything, from Dr. Moore's note, to the conversation in the kitchen, to the cold looks from my son and daughter-in-law, led to a single conclusion. I had to leave. If I stayed here another day, I would be walking right into their trap. The thought sent a sharp pain through my chest. This was the house my husband and I had built, where we had laughed and held each other through long winters. Every brick, every window frame held a memory. And now I had to leave it all behind, like a fugitive. I closed my eyes, a bitter taste in my mouth. It wasn't the house I was running from. It was the people inside it. I sat up and moved quietly to the closet. I couldn't take much. I chose only the essentials, a few simple outfits, a warm coat, a comfortable pair of shoes. I grabbed an old handbag and stuffed a few toiletries inside. But the most important things, the notebook with the passwords, the bank documents, the real estate deeds, were sealed in a plastic bag and hidden deep inside my luggage. I sat on the edge of the bed and took a deep breath, my heart pounding. Can I do this? I'm 72 years old. Do I have the strength? A small voice in my head whispered of exhaustion and helplessness, but another voice, stronger and louder, cut through. If you don't go, you'll lose everything. If you don't go, you'll die a slow death inside the four walls of a nursing home. I nodded to myself, a silent vow. I had to go. That night, I pretended to be fast asleep. I lay motionless in bed, eyes closed, listening to every sound. Around midnight, I heard the door to Nathan's room close, followed by Eleanor's faint laugh before silence fell over the house. This was my chance. I quietly lifted the handbag onto my shoulder, my hand trembling as I opened my bedroom door. The creak of the hinge almost made my heart stop. I paused for a few seconds, holding my breath, listening. No one stirred. I stepped out and crept down the wooden staircase. each step feeling like I was walking on thin ice. Downstairs in the kitchen, I stopped and let my eyes scan the familiar room, the old wooden table where I used to tell my granddaughter stories, the oven where I baked birthday cookies for Nathan, the framed photo on the wall of our smiling family. They were all beautiful memories, but now they felt hollow. I couldn't take them with me. All that was left was me, an old woman on the run from her own home. I gently opened the back door. The cold night air rushed in, sweeping through my silver hair. My heart was racing. I turned for one last look at the house. In the darkness, it stood tall, both familiar and foreign. I whispered in my heart, "Goodbye. Goodbye to all the naive years. Goodbye to the illusion of a family." I stepped outside, pulling the door shut without making a sound. The city night was chilly, the streetlights casting long yellow streaks on the sidewalk. I pulled my coat tighter and clutched my bag to my chest. Each step was heavy, a mix of pain and relief, as if I were leaving a part of myself behind. I followed the small back alley, where few people ever walked. A storm of questions raged in my head. Where do I go now? I can't wander forever. I can't check into a normal hotel. What if they find me? Is there anyone I can ask for help? I thought of a few old friends, but I had lost touch long ago, not wanting to be a burden. I thought of distant relatives, but no one was close enough to help. It was just me and my bag, but inside that bag, I had something they didn't know about: papers, cash, my husband's secret, and I knew that was my weapon for survival. I walked faster, trying to get out of sight of the house. Every passing car made me jump and hide in the shadows. I felt like I was fleeing from invisible predators, but at the same time, I felt something else: freedom. For the first time in years, I wasn't bound by my son's judgment or my daughter-in-law's cutting remarks. It was just me, and that was both terrifying and empowering. When I reached a main intersection, I hailed a taxi. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes curious. "Where to at this hour, ma'am?" I hesitated, then said quietly, "Downtown." He nodded and started the engine. I leaned back against the seat, my hand still gripping the bag on my lap. The streetlights flashed across the window, casting a flickering shadow of me, an old woman with silver hair, her eyes tired but shining with determination. The car pulled away from the familiar street, away from the house that was once my home. I glanced back through the rear window one last time. The roof was lost in the darkness, silent, as if nothing had ever happened. But I knew, from the moment I left, everything had changed. I was no longer the naive, self-sacrificing woman I once was. I was turning a new page, a page of struggle, of resistance, of freedom. That night, as the taxi sped into the darkness, I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, I escaped. The first step is done. I escaped. The taxi carried me away from the familiar suburbs. I sat in the back, my eyes fixed on the window, watching the rows of houses drift by in the darkness. Every lit window made my heart ache. Inside one of them, a family was probably gathered, laughing and talking. And here I was, a wanderer, with my life stuffed into an old handbag, running from my own flesh and blood. "Which hotel are you heading to, ma'am?" the driver asked kindly. I froze for a moment. I hadn't even thought about that. For years, my world had been confined to my house. I never had to worry about where to sleep. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Take me to a hotel downtown, something safe and quiet. Price is not an issue." He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but he just nodded. The car continued on. About 20 minutes later, we stopped in front of a brightly lit building. The golden sign read, Hotel Astoria. I had heard of it, a well-known hotel, elegant but not overly flashy. My heart pounded. I had never set foot in a luxury hotel, but I knew I needed a place like this, a place where they wouldn't find me so easily. I paid the fare and stepped out. The revolving glass door opened into a cool, air-conditioned lobby that smelled faintly of essential oils. The front desk was brightly lit, and 2 receptionists in uniform smiled warmly. "Good evening, ma'am, checking in?" a young woman asked, her voice welcoming. I nodded, trying to hide the tremor in my hands. "Yes, I'd like a single room, as quiet as possible. I can pay with a card or cash." The receptionist typed quickly on her keyboard and handed me a registration form. As I signed my name, I realized how long had it been since I signed my own name in a strange place, as an independent person, not as Nathan's mother or Olivia's grandmother. The feeling was surreal. She handed me a key card. "Room 1703 on the 17th floor. It has a view of the park. We hope you have a pleasant stay." A pleasant stay? I thought with a pang of irony. This wasn't a vacation, it was an escape. But I just nodded and thanked her. The elevator whisked me upwards. The doors opened to a red-carpeted hallway, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I unlocked my room and switched on the lights. It was spacious, with a crisp white bed and a large picture window overlooking the glittering city. I stood there for a few minutes, just breathing. This is where I would start over. I set down my bag and pulled back the curtains. The city at night stretched out below me, a sea of 1,000 starry lights. I was mesmerized. How long had it been since I'd seen the city from up high like this? How long had I been confined to the view of my kitchen, my garden, and the same old walls? I went into the bathroom and turned on the hot water. Steam filled the room, fogging the mirror. I looked at my reflection, an old woman with silver hair, wrinkled skin, and red-rimmed eyes. But for the first time in days, I didn't just see exhaustion, I saw that I was still alive. I took off my damp coat and stepped under the hot spray. The water washed over my shoulders, rinsing away the tears and the cruel whispers from the night before. I let myself relax, letting the water embrace me. After my shower, I wrapped myself in the hotel's soft robe and sat on the pristine bed. I turned on the warm bedside lamp, filled the electric kettle, and made myself a cup of tea. The gentle aroma filled the air. I took slow sips, my mind calming. I never thought that at 72, I would experience a moment so strange, so painful, yet so liberating. The room phone rang softly, just an automated message from the hotel, wishing me a good night. I laughed. How many years had it been since someone wished me a good night? At home. All I heard were slamming doors and cold whispers. Here. Even a simple automated wish made my heart soften. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. A thought crossed my mind. I'm on the run. But maybe this was also the first time in my life I was truly living for myself. I didn't have to play a role anymore, not a mother, not a grandmother, not a self-sacrificing woman. I was just me. The next morning, I woke up in a sun-drenched room. The distant hum of traffic was like an unfamiliar soundtrack. I stepped onto the balcony and took a deep breath. There was no musty smell of my old house, no feeling of being watched, just me and the vast open sky. I went down to the hotel's buffet restaurant. A staff member greeted me with a friendly smile. "Good morning, ma'am." I smiled back, a little shyly. I chose a few slices of toast, some fruit, and a cup of black coffee. I sat alone by a large window, watching the bustling crowds below. No one knew who I was. No one was judging me. No one was plotting behind my back. It felt strange, but also incredibly light. A young waiter approached my table politely. "Is there anything else I can get for you, ma'am?" I shook my head, then asked on an impulse, "Do you have services for holding or forwarding mail here?" "Yes, we do. Were you looking to send something?" I smiled and shook my head. "Not yet, thank you." He nodded and walked away. Watching him go, a fragile sense of hope sparked within me. Out here, there were still polite, kind people who weren't driven by greed. Not everyone was like my son and daughter-in-law. When I returned to my room, I sat at the desk, opened my bag, and took out the file of papers my husband had left me. I spread them out, taking a deep breath. For the first time, I didn't feel completely helpless. I had something to protect myself with. And more importantly, I had freedom, at least for now, in this room on the 17th floor. That night, I stood by the window again, looking at the city lights. I whispered, 72 years old, and I'm starting over. The next morning, I sat in my hotel room, a steaming cup of coffee and my husband's documents spread out before me. I knew I couldn't just hide on the 17th floor forever. Running away was just the first step. If I wanted to survive, if I wanted to keep my freedom, I had to fight back, but I couldn't fight alone. I needed someone who understood the law, who could protect me from the legal maneuvers Nathan and Eleanor would surely use. Nathan's words echoed in my head. "I'll call a lawyer tomorrow. We just need a court to declare her incompetent." I knew if they had a lawyer, I needed my own ally. I picked up my phone and searched for reputable law firms in the city. My hand was shaking, but my eyes were glued to the screen. After a few minutes, one name kept popping up, mentioned in several articles: Michael Harris, an attorney specializing in elder law, who had won numerous cases involving family abuse. My heart pounded. This was the man I needed. I called his office. A polite receptionist answered. "Harris Law? How may I help you?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. I'd like to make an appointment with Mr. Harris. I have a family matter. It's quite serious. The receptionist asked a few basic questions and then said, "Mr. Harris can see you this afternoon at 3. Can you come to the office at 221 Lexington Avenue?" I thanked her and hung up. My heart was a mix of relief and anxiety. I looked out the window. The afternoon sun was bright, but my world still felt gray. This was a decisive step. If I chose wrong, I could lose everything. But if I chose right, I would have an ally. At 3 o'clock sharp, I was standing in front of the office building on Lexington Avenue. The street was bustling with people. I took a deep breath and pushed through the polished glass doors. The law office was on the 12th floor. The hallway had a plush green carpet, and the glass door was elegantly etched. Harris and Associates, elder law specialists. I walked in. A young secretary smiled. "Hello, you must be—" "I'm Margaret," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Yes, Margaret, please have a seat. Mr. Harris will be right with you." I sat on the sofa, clutching my handbag. A few minutes later, a man in his 50s, tall with neatly combed, salt and pepper hair, walked out. He wore a dark suit and thin-rimmed glasses. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. "Margaret," he said, extending his hand. His voice was a warm baritone. "Please, come in." I followed him into his office. It was a large room, lined with bookshelves full of files, but the soft light from the window made it feel less intimidating. Mr. Harris motioned for me to sit, then took the seat opposite me. "My secretary mentioned you have a serious family issue. Can you tell me everything from the beginning?" I took a long breath. This was the first time I would tell the whole truth to a stranger. Summoning all my courage, I pulled the note from Dr. Moore out of my pocket and placed it on the desk. "This is where it all started," I said, my voice hoarse. Mr. Harris frowned, read the short, frantic words, and then looked up at me. "Don't go home, run." "This is from your doctor?" I nodded and then slowly recounted everything. The checkup, the doctor's full message, the conversation I overheard between Nathan and Eleanor. I told him every detail, every word they said, every tear I cried. My voice broke several times, but Mr. Harris didn't interrupt. He just listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When I finished, silence filled the room. I sat there, breathing heavily, as if a huge weight had been lifted. Mr. Harris leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed, his gaze sharp. "Margaret," he said slowly, "what you've told me is extremely serious. If it's true, your son and daughter-in-law could be charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, and even extortion. But to win in court, we need more than your testimony and a single note." I nodded, trembling but resolute. "I understand. What do I need to do?" Mr. Harris looked at me for a long moment, as if weighing his options. Then he gave a slight nod. "First, I want to say this. You are not as weak as you think you are. I've met many elderly clients, but not all of them have the courage to leave on their own and seek out a lawyer. You've already done half the work. Now, we'll do the rest together." I felt a lump form in my throat. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to me with such respect, since anyone had seen me as a person with strength. He continued, "You need to secure all original documents you have, proof of assets, your husband's will, everything. In addition, we need to gather more evidence, recordings, videos, any documentation that proves their intent. Can you do that?" I swallowed hard, then nodded. "I will. I have no other choice." A faint smile touched the corners of Mr. Harris's mouth. "Good. I'll be your lawyer. But you need to be prepared. This won't be a short fight. They will fight back. They may use every dirty trick in the book, lying, trying to prove you're mentally incompetent. But I believe you, and I will stand with you." My eyes burned. I turned away, blinking hard to stop the tears. How long had it been since I felt like I wasn't completely alone? How long since someone stood by my side, not because of blood ties, but because of justice? I pulled the file my husband had left me from my bag and placed it on the desk. "This is what I have. They don't know about it. I want you to keep a copy, just in case." Mr. Harris took the file and nodded. "I'll arrange that. Margaret, from now on, you are not alone. We are going to expose them together." I looked into his eyes. It wasn't a look of pity for an old woman. It was a look of respect for a woman who was standing up to protect herself. And in that moment, I knew. I had found my first ally. The next day, I was back in Harris's office. My heart was still fluttering from our first meeting, but this time, I felt something new. Determination. With Mr. Harris on my side, I felt like I had a shield. I was no longer a frightened old woman hiding in the shadows with her secret. I had an ally who knew the law, who knew how to fight back. In a small conference room, Mr. Harris introduced me to another man. He was in his 40s, with a buzz cut and a lean, athletic build. His eyes were sharp, his movements precise. "This is David Collins," Harris said. "He's a private investigator I trust completely. He's going to help us gather the evidence we need." David shook my hand. His grip was firm, which was surprisingly reassuring. "Margaret, Mr. Harris gave me the rundown. If what you say is true, we have a strong case. But first, I need to verify everything." I nodded, my voice quiet. "I'm ready to help in any way I can." David took out a notepad. "Can you give me a list of the banks, assets, and any documents you've shared with your family? I need to know what they have access to." I pulled out the copies of the documents from my bag and spread them on the table. When David saw them, he frowned. "This is more than enough for them to do some damage. If they're planning something, they wouldn't ignore this." Mr. Harris interjected. "David, I want you to check for any credit lines, mortgages, or transactions made in Margaret's name over the last 3 years. I suspect they may have forged her signature." David nodded, scribbling in his notepad. Then he looked at me. "This might take a few days, but I'll find out." 3 days later, I was called back to the office. When I walked in, David was already there, a thick file on the table in front of him. A shiver went down my spine. I knew I was about to hear the truth, a truth that could shatter what little hope I had left. "Margaret," David began, his voice firm. "I've done the investigation, and the results are disturbing." I clasped my hands together and whispered, "Tell me." He opened the file, laying out photocopied documents. "This is a credit loan application for $75,000, signed in your name. But this signature," he pointed to the scrawled name, "doesn't match the signature from your official records. It's a clear forgery." My head spun. David continued, "This is a partial mortgage agreement on your house, also in your name, signed 8 months ago. Another forged signature. The $120,000 was transferred directly into a joint account belonging to Nathan and Eleanor." My heart seized. Every word he spoke was another stab wound. "And this," David said, turning to the last page, his voice dropping, "is proof that Eleanor has been using a secondary credit card in your name for years. Nearly $40,000 in charges over the last 2 years. Shopping sprees, jewelry, even weekend getaways." I sat there, stunned into silence. My eyes were glued to the numbers, to the distorted signatures bearing my name. They had used me. They had turned me into their personal piggy bank, draining me dry while I had trusted them completely. "That's not all," David added. "I also discovered that Nathan has been unemployed for almost a year, but he's been hiding it from you. He pretended to go to work every day, but he was actually staying home, trying to cover his debts. And Eleanor has been in frequent contact with a group of shady real estate agents. It's likely they were planning to sell your house out from under you." I sank into my chair, feeling the blood drain from my face. The room started to spin. Everything I thought was stable, my son's job, his family's life, it was all a lie. Tears streamed down my face. "I gave them everything," I said, my voice breaking. "I sacrificed my whole life, and still, they wanted to take more, to take every last drop." Mr. Harris sat down next to me, his voice firm. "Margaret, I know this is painful, but look at the bright side. Now we have evidence. This isn't just your story anymore. This is hard proof we can take to court." David nodded. "We have enough to charge them with forgery and financial abuse. The question now is, do you want to take this all the way? It means you will have to confront your son and daughter-in-law directly." I looked up, wiping my tears. The pain was still raw, but underneath it, a fire of anger was igniting. The memory of that night, of listening to them plot against me, came flooding back. Now, with this evidence, I saw it clearly. They didn't just want to put me in a nursing home. They wanted to destroy me completely, to turn me into an empty shell so they could take everything. I clenched my fists, my voice shaking but firm. "I will see this through to the end. I can't forgive this. I've been silent my whole life, but this time, I will not back down." Mr. Harris looked at me and gave a slight nod. "That's the spirit I was hoping for. We will prepare, step by step. But remember, they won't go down quietly. When they realize you know everything, they will fight back hard. And when they do, we have to be ready." I nodded. In the glass reflection behind his desk, I saw myself, an old woman with silver hair and red-rimmed eyes, but in them was a hardness I had never seen in myself before. I knew I had just lost my family, but I had also just found something else, a strength I never knew I had. And from that day on, I was no longer just the betrayed mother and grandmother. I was a woman who was going to bring the truth to light. Leaving Harris's office that afternoon, I walked through the crowded streets feeling as though I had shed an old skin. I'd always thought I was too weak, that my only option was to endure. But now, after seeing David's undeniable evidence, I understood I had nothing left to lose. And if I stayed silent, I would be an accomplice in my own tragedy. That night in the hotel, I sat by the window, the city lights reflecting on my face. I opened a small notebook and wrote, "It's time to fight back." My hand was trembling, but my mind was clear. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I called Nathan. I made my voice sound shaky and weak, like a lonely old woman who needed her family. "Hello, Nathan, it's Mom." There was a brief hesitation on the other end. Then his voice came, laced with tension. "Mom, where are you? Why did you leave for days without saying anything?" I bit my lip, forcing a sigh. I was just tired. I needed to be alone. But I miss you. I miss Emily. I think maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should just let you two handle everything. I don't want to be a burden anymore. I could hear Eleanor whispering something in the background. Nathan's voice changed, becoming falsely gentle. "Mom, where are you? Let me come pick you up. We can talk." My heart pounded. That's right, they're taking the bait. I pretended to hesitate, then gave him the address of a small coffee shop near my hotel, a public place with security cameras and plenty of people. I knew I would be safe there, and everything they said could be easily recorded. That afternoon, I walked into the coffee shop, clutching my handbag. Inside it, my phone was already recording audio, and a small pen David had given me, actually a miniature camera, was clipped to the pocket. I took a deep breath just as Nathan and Eleanor walked in. They scanned the room, then walked over to my table. Nathan leaned down and gave me a light kiss on the forehead, but his touch was ice cold. Eleanor forced a cheerful smile. "Mom, you had us so worried. Why did you just leave like that?" I managed a weak, fragile smile. "I was just tired. I think maybe I'm not as sharp as I used to be. Maybe you were right. I should let my children take care of things. I don't want to be a burden," just as I predicted. Eleanor's eyes lit up with a flicker of unconcealed triumph. She quickly masked it with a sympathetic smile. "Oh, Mom, don't say that. We just want what's best for you." Nathan jumped in, his voice carefully controlled. "Mom, we've talked it over. The Rosewood Senior Living Facility has excellent medical care. You'd have doctors on call 24/7. We think it's the best option for you." I feigned hesitation, bowing my head. "If I agree." "What kind of papers would I need to sign?" Eleanor immediately pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. "Just a few power of attorney forms. Mom, it will let Nathan and me handle your finances, pay the fees, sell the house if we need to. It's all for you." My heart ached, but I pretended to be frail, covering my mouth with a trembling hand. I can't see the small print very well. Can you explain it to me?" Nathan sighed, then began to explain, inadvertently revealing his true intentions. His voice was low, but my phone was catching every word. "Once you sign this, you won't have to worry about a thing. Eleanor and I will have full control over your assets, the house, the bank accounts. You can just relax at Rosewood. No more pressure." Pressure? I almost burst into tears. I had sacrificed my entire life to provide for them, and now they saw me as a burden to be discarded. Eleanor chimed in, unable to contain her impatience. "Just sign it, Mom, so we can sell the house. The market is good right now. We'll lose money if we wait. With that money, we can take care of a lot of things." She stopped herself, but it was too late. It was all on tape. I gave a little cough and waved my hand dismissively. I need some time to think. Let me hold on to the papers and read them over. I'll give you an answer tomorrow. Nathan hesitated for a second, then nodded. All right, but don't take too long. This is for your own good. I took the folder, folded it, and put it in my bag. I was trembling, not from fear, but from the rage boiling inside me. I had more evidence, clear and undeniable. The meeting ended quickly. As they left, Eleanor couldn't hide the greedy glint in her eyes. I stayed behind, my hand clenching my bag, silent tears streaming down my face. But this time, they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were the tears of someone who had just turned the tables. That evening, I met with Harris and David back at the office. I handed them the folder and the recording. David put on his headphones and played the conversation. When he heard Eleanor say, "So we can sell the house," he frowned and slammed his hand on the table. That's it. That's direct evidence. They can't deny this. Mr. Harris looked at me, his eyes shining. Margaret, you did brilliantly. This was the first major counterattack. With this, we can force them into court. But before we go public, we need to prepare for the fallout. I sat there, exhausted but empowered. I had faced my son and daughter-in-law. I had listened to them reveal their scheme right to my face. I had endured, pretending to be weak to set my trap. And now, I held the truth in my hands. In the reflection of the office window, I saw myself, a thin, silver-haired old woman. But her eyes were burning bright. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just surviving, I was fighting. For several days, I sat with Harris and David, planning our strategy. The evidence was overwhelming, but if we just filed it with the court, they could try to delay, to fabricate stories about my mental state, or even produce fake witnesses. I needed a preemptive strike, something irreversible. It was Harris who suggested it. Have you ever considered telling your story yourself, not just in a court filing, but to the public? I was taken aback. You mean the press? He shook his head and smiled. In this day and age, you don't need the press. A single live stream is enough. Thousands of people will hear your story. Once the truth is out there, they'll have nowhere left to hide. I was silent, my mind racing. At 72, I had never imagined I would use something called a live stream. But I understood his point immediately. If public opinion was on my side, Nathan and Eleanor would find it much harder to manipulate the legal system. That night, I sat in my hotel room in front of the laptop David had brought me. They had set everything up. All I had to do was turn on the webcam and speak. I sat there for a long time, looking at my reflection on the dark screen, an old woman with silver hair, tired eyes, and a wrinkled face. Would anyone believe me? Would anyone even listen? Then I remembered Nathan's voice from that night. She's alone, no friends, no one will stand by her. That was the thought that made me click the Start Live Stream button. Hello, everyone, I began, my voice trembling but clear. My name is Margaret. I am 72 years old, and tonight, I want to tell you a story. My story. I started with the doctor's appointment, with the note he gave me. I told them about the nights I overheard my son and daughter-in-law planning to put me in a nursing home, about the greedy ambition in their eyes. I didn't hide my tears or try to be dramatic. I just let the emotions flow. Then, I held up the photocopies of the forged documents. They took out loans, mortgaged my home, and spent money in my name. I said, my voice choking, "This is a forged signature. This is a bank account that was drained. I knew nothing until an investigator showed me the proof. Finally." I played the recording from the coffee shop. Nathan's voice filled the room. "Once you sign this, Eleanor and I will have full control over your assets, the house, the bank accounts. Then Eleanor's cold voice cut in. Just sign it, Mom, so we can sell the house. The market is good right now. I sat in silence, letting the audio echo in my hotel room and through the screens of thousands of others. When the recording ended, I wiped my tears and looked directly into the camera. I raised Nathan since he was 2 years old. I sacrificed my entire life for him. And this is how he repays me. I'm not telling this story for pity. I'm telling it because I know I am not the only one. There are so many elderly people being abused, taken advantage of, and turned into ATMs by their own families. I refuse to be silent anymore. I will stand up, even if I am 72 years old. I paused, my heart hammering. Then I said softly, but with conviction, if you are listening to this story, please believe me. We, the elderly, are not invisible. We still have a voice. I never expected what happened next. Within hours, my live stream was shared everywhere. Thousands of comments poured in. Margaret, we believe you. You are so brave. I can't believe children could be so cruel. You are not alone. We stand with you. I read every comment, tears streaming down my face, but this time they were tears of warmth. Strangers, people who had never met me, were reaching out to protect me. While my own family had turned their backs, messages from news outlets and elder advocacy groups flooded my inbox. Everyone wanted to interview me, to share my story. Harris called, his voice jubilant. Margaret, you've done something incredible. They have no way out now. Public opinion is on your side. But the reaction wasn't just directed at me. That night, Nathan and Eleanor were condemned by their neighbors, friends, and colleagues. An acquaintance called to tell me that Eleanor was being shunned at work, and Nathan had been yelled at on his own doorstep. My phone rang nonstop. When I answered, it was Nathan, his voice a mix of anger and panic. Mom, why would you do this? Are you trying to destroy this family? I answered calmly, with a coldness that surprised even me. No, Nathan, you and Eleanor already destroyed this family. I just showed everyone the truth. On the other end, I could hear Eleanor shrieking, "You'll pay for embarrassing us like this." I gave a faint, bitter smile and hung up. I knew the real storm was just beginning. That night, I sat by the hotel window again. The city was still glowing, but inside me, a new fire was burning. I was no longer a trembling old woman hiding in the shadows. I had just stepped into the light and told my story to the world. And for the first time in years, I felt free. 2 weeks after the live stream, my case officially went to district court. I sat in the waiting room early that morning, clutching the file Harris had prepared. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would break through my chest. I had never been in a legal battle before, but now I knew I had no other choice. Harris sat beside me, his expression calm. David stood behind us with a thick binder of documents. Margaret, Harris said softly, remember, you are not alone. We are fighting with you. I nodded, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. The courtroom doors opened. I walked in, and dozens of eyes turned toward me. The public gallery was packed, reporters, concerned citizens, even a few faces I recognized as old neighbors. The air was thick with tension. On the opposite side sat Nathan and Eleanor. Nathan was in a suit, but his face was grim, his eyes burning with anger as he looked at me. Eleanor tried to maintain a calm facade, but her white-knuckled grip on her purse betrayed her anxiety. Looking at them, my heart ached, but it also flared with a strange strength. The trial began. The judge banged his gavel, his voice stern. Today, we will hear the case concerning Margaret, who alleges that her adopted son, Nathan, and his wife, Eleanor, have committed financial abuse, forgery, and conspiracy to commit extortion. Their lawyer stood up first. He was a young man in a slick suit. Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. My clients, Nathan and Eleanor, were simply trying to care for their elderly mother, who has begun to show signs of confusion. The paperwork was to facilitate the management of her assets and ensure she had a comfortable life in a nursing home. There was never any conspiracy to steal from her. My blood boiled. Confusion? They were trying to paint me as mentally incompetent in open court. Harris rose, his voice firm. Your Honor, we have concrete evidence. A loan for $75,000 with a forged signature. A mortgage on her home for $120,000, also with a forged signature. Furthermore, we have an audio recording in which Nathan and Eleanor admit their intention to take full control of her assets and sell her house. He handed the documents to the court clerk. A large screen was set up, displaying a side-by-side comparison of the signatures. I could see it clearly. The signature on the loan was completely different from my own. A murmur spread through the courtroom. The other lawyer jumped up. That could simply be a variation due to age. The elderly often have unsteady hands when signing. It's not conclusive proof of forgery. David was called to the stand. His voice was steady. I hired a forensic handwriting expert. This report proves that it is impossible for Margaret to have signed these documents herself. They are forgeries, and the evidence strongly suggests they were executed by Eleanor. All eyes turned to Eleanor. Her face was pale, but she managed a contemptuous smirk. Harris wasn't finished. He gave a signal, and a court officer played the recording from the coffee shop. Nathan's voice filled the courtroom. Once you sign this, Eleanor and I will have full control over your assets. The house, the bank accounts. Then Eleanor's voice, clear and cold. Just sign it, Mom, so we can sell the house. The market is good right now. The courtroom erupted in gasps. I sat there, my hands clasped together, tears streaming down my face, but I held my head high. This was no longer just my word against theirs. This was the truth, laid bare for everyone to see. Nathan shot to his feet, shouting, "No, that's been edited. My mother, she's not well. She's imagining things." My heart constricted as I heard my own son call me mentally unfit. I wanted to scream, but Harris placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. He stood up, his voice ringing with authority. Your Honor, this recording has been authenticated. It is unedited. It is irrefutable evidence. The judge frowned, banging his gavel for order. The plaintiff may proceed. Harris turned to me. Margaret, would you be willing to testify? I stood up, my legs shaking but my gaze steady. I walked to the stand and looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, my memory is perfectly clear. I raised Nathan since he was 2 years old. I gave him my entire life. But he and his wife tried to put me in a nursing home to steal my assets. I am not lying. I have proof. I have witnesses. And most importantly, I have the memory to recall every single detail. My voice choked with emotion, but my words echoed through the room. The defense attorney tried to counter, Your Honor, Margaret could be delusional. At her age, I held my head high and cut him off. I may be old, but I am not crazy. I know exactly who is trying to steal my life from me. The courtroom fell silent. The judge made a note, his face grim. I turned and my eyes met Nathan's. My son looked at me like I was the enemy, his eyes bloodshot with rage. In that instant, I saw a chasm between us that could never be bridged. Eleanor whispered frantically to her lawyer, her lips trembling. I realized her mask of composure was finally cracking. The trial continued as more evidence was presented. Bank statements, credit card bills in my name. Each page was another hammer blow to their defense. I sat still, my heart aching but also triumphant. The truth was coming out, but I knew this fight wasn't over. I saw a desperate glint in Nathan's eyes. I could feel it. They wouldn't go down without a fight. And I braced myself. The ugliest battle was just beginning. On the second day of the trial, the tension in the courtroom was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Every piece of evidence Harris presented was another crack in their flimsy defense. I sat quietly, watching Nathan and Eleanor. I knew they were cornered, and I knew cornered animals were the most dangerous. And then it happened. As their lawyer was trying to push the "Margaret is confused" narrative, Nathan suddenly shot to his feet, his voice booming. "No, it wasn't me. It was all Eleanor. She forced me to do it. She's the one who forged my mother's signature." A wave of murmurs swept through the gallery. I was stunned. I never imagined I would hear my own son say that, in public, throwing his wife under the bus without a second thought. Eleanor whipped her head toward Nathan, her eyes blazing. "How dare you? You were the one who planned everything. I just did what you told me to do. You wanted the money to pay off your debts. You made me forge those papers." Nathan's face turned beet red, his hands shaking. "You're lying. You were the one who came up with the idea to put my mother in a home. I never wanted to do that." Eleanor laughed, a bitter, sharp sound. "Oh, really? What about the day you said, 'We have to sell the house before she changes her mind'? I remember every word. Don't you dare try to pin this on me." The courtroom descended into chaos. The judge had to bang his gavel repeatedly to restore order. But I just sat there, watching my son and daughter-in-law tear each other apart, and my heart filled with a bitter, painful irony. This was my family, once a sanctuary, now a battlefield. Harris leaned over and whispered, "You see? We don't have to push anymore. They're destroying themselves." David nodded slightly, his gaze cold. When co-conspirators turn on each other, the truth comes out faster than any evidence can prove. After a few chaotic minutes, the judge allowed the proceedings to continue. Harris stood up, seizing the opportunity. "Your Honor, the defendants themselves have now verbally confirmed that forgery and coercion took place. While they may blame each other, the undeniable fact is that both were involved. This is a direct admission of guilt." The defense lawyer tried to object, but his voice was weak, his confidence shattered. Suddenly, Eleanor burst into tears, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. I only did it because I was scared. Nathan was always in debt, always threatening me. I had no choice. Nathan screamed, spitting out each word. "Don't you dare blame me for everything. You're just as greedy as I am, Eleanor. You wanted the money for your designer clothes, your vacations. Don't you stand there and pretend to be a saint." I saw people in the gallery shaking their heads, many looking at me with pity. I looked down, my hands clutching my dress. My heart was breaking, but I knew. The truth was, finally, unstoppably, coming out. Then, unexpectedly, the court clerk entered and handed the judge a note. He read it, his brow furrowing. "There is a new witness who wishes to speak. Someone directly related to the case. Margaret's granddaughter, Nathan's daughter." The courtroom buzzed with excitement. I gasped, my heart skipping a beat. My granddaughter, Emily. I never thought she would be here. All this time, I thought she was indifferent, staying out of it. The door opened. Emily walked in, her long hair falling over her shoulders, her face pale but her eyes shining with determination. She wore a simple white blouse, and though her hands were shaking, her steps were firm. I looked at her, and my throat tightened. Emily, the little girl I used to hold in my arms, the one I bought her very first books for. Now she was here, in a courtroom, in the middle of our family's tragedy. The judge asked, "Young lady, do you have something to say?" Emily swallowed hard, and her voice, though trembling at first, grew stronger with each word. "Your Honor, I can't be silent anymore. I've heard everything. I know what my parents did. I heard them talking in the living room so many times about putting my grandmother in a home, selling the house, taking the money. I tried to argue with them, but they told me to shut up. I even saved some text messages on my phone where they talked about how much money they would get. The courtroom fell completely silent. Every word Emily spoke was like the chime of a bell. I covered my mouth with my hand, tears streaming down my face. I never imagined she would take my side, especially when she was Nathan's own daughter. Nathan's face went white. "Emily," he roared. "How could you betray your own father? You don't know anything." Emily turned and looked directly at him, her eyes red but defiant. "You're not the father I used to know. I can't pretend anymore. Grandma raised this entire family, and you tried to destroy her. I can't forgive that." Eleanor, equally pale, tried to interject. "She's been influenced. She can't be a credible witness." But the judge held up a hand. "The court will review the electronic evidence the witness has provided." Emily took out her phone and gave it to the clerk. A moment later, the text messages appeared on the large screen. "If she signs, we sell the house immediately. We have to be fast before she changes her mind." A message from Eleanor's phone number. The gallery erupted. I could hear people gasping. I sat there, my heart feeling like it had broken open, but not just from pain. Behind the bitterness, I saw a glimmer of light. The final truth was being revealed, and it was my own granddaughter who was holding the torch. The court called for a recess amidst the chaos. I looked at Emily, my vision blurred with tears. She turned to me and gave a small, firm nod, and I knew I wasn't alone anymore. After Emily's testimony, the courtroom was in an uproar. Nathan and Eleanor's lawyer tried to salvage the situation, but it was clear their case had completely crumbled. I sat in silence, my heart torn between the pain of my family's destruction and the soaring hope of justice. My granddaughter had done what I never dared to dream. She had chosen truth over blood. On the final day of the trial, the gallery was more crowded than ever. Citizens, reporters, and members of elder advocacy groups were all present. In that moment, I understood. My fight was no longer just a personal story. It had become a symbol for elderly people facing injustice everywhere. The judge sat, his face grave, his voice echoing through the silent room. After reviewing all evidence, the forged documents, the audio recordings, the text messages, and the witness testimonies, this court finds Nathan and Eleanor guilty of forgery, financial abuse, and conspiracy to commit extortion. Both defendants will be referred for criminal prosecution. Furthermore, they are hereby stripped of any and all access to Margaret's assets. All property, including the house and bank accounts, are to be returned to the plaintiff's full control. The sound of the gavel was like a thunderclap. I sat frozen, tears of relief streaming down my face. I had won, not just for myself, but for all the years I was dismissed, disrespected, and treated like a burden. Nathan slumped forward, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Eleanor began to sob hysterically, screaming, "No, I was forced into it. I didn't want this." But no one was listening anymore. Two bailiffs approached, placing firm hands on their shoulders to lead them away. I watched them go, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. Pain because no matter what, Nathan was my son, the little boy I had held and sacrificed my life for, but also relief, because the truth was finally out. I no longer had to live in fear of betrayal. Emily was sitting in the witness section, her eyes on me. I walked over to her and took her hand. "Thank you," I whispered. "You saved me." She hugged me tightly, her voice trembling. "You'll never be alone again, Grandma, I promise." In the days following the trial, my story was everywhere. The media dubbed it the Rosewood case, a symbol of an elder's fight against family abuse. I became an unlikely public figure, but what moved me most were the letters and messages that poured in from all over the country. Margaret, because of your story, I found the courage to leave my own abusive children. Thank you for speaking up for the thousands of us who are too afraid. I read every single one, my tears falling onto the pages. I realized my battle had lit a fire, not just for me, but for so many others living in the dark. I returned to my house, the same old house, but now it felt warm again, filled with memories of my husband. I opened the door, took a deep breath of the familiar scent of old wood, and whispered, "I did it, my love. I kept our home. I didn't let them take it." In that moment, my heart felt as light as the wind. I started spending my days tending to my rose garden, reading books, and writing in my journal. I was no longer a trembling woman waiting for pity. I was a woman who had walked through darkness and reclaimed her freedom with her own courage. Thank you all for listening, for believing me, and for standing with me when I thought I was all alone. It was your support that gave me the strength to see this through. If you are in a similar situation, please do not stay silent. Stand up. You are not alone. If my story has given you strength, please support this channel and share it with others, because you never know, you might just save another life lost in the darkness. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next story.